Hello and welcome to this video about mine and Lydia's 5-week trip throughout Scotland. Now, as many of you may have seen, hi, I'm Sid, I'm Lydia's boyfriend, and on her channel we travelled throughout Scotland for 5 weeks, and all of the videos are posted on her channel so you can see what we did all of there. Now, as many of you were asking how we planned it and how we went about and what sort of costs there were to do with it. I'm here to explain where we went, how I sort of planned it, how you can plan it as well, and the expectations for the costs involved as well. Now, the reason I'm doing this video is mainly because Lydia had nothing to do with the planning. She didn't really have a clue where we were going each day. I was the one sort of driving, telling her where we were going and what we were doing, and also sorting out how much it was going to cost for each thing and everything like that. So this is why you have me explaining all of that and not Lydia this time. I hope that was all okay. So the reason why we decided to go to Scotland, of all places, was mainly because it is 2021, COVID is just disappearing. So we just thought, when it was all up in the air earlier on in the year, we just thought the best place to probably go was to stay within the UK, and it doesn't affect any travel occurrences. And we were planning on going abroad to somewhere sunnier. However, it did actually turn out Scotland was probably the best place to go to. It was such an amazing place, so stunning, so cheap and easy to travel around. I would recommend it to anybody, young, old, whoever. It's an amazing place and you can have such a good time there. So the video today, there'll be timestamps down below in the video bar. But basically the whole idea is I'll just basically go through the itinerary of where we went, how we did it, and just list off the main places that I really enjoyed and that Lydia really enjoyed, and those sort of must-see places to go. And then afterwards, I'll also mention a quick packing list, the main things to pack, who should do it, and also at the end there'll be the costs. It's the cost to expect, how much it sort of costs us, go and travel, and then it just means that you know sort of what a budget is worth and also how long is a good amount of time to go for on your own budget. That's pretty much going to be it. Now, I went about planning it the same as most other people. I had a quick look on the internet and I couldn't really see many things out there. Now, what I remember seeing was there was a load of blogs and stuff like that, but the problem was is these blogs seemed to be by older people, these walking blogs and stuff like that, the ones that I didn't really understand too much, and you having to read a lot through it to actually get the information out, and you didn't really know if it was actually worth it or if it was going to be worth it for myself and Lydia, who were younger, might not enjoy the same sort of things. So that required a lot of attention, a lot of reading to go through. There is a lot of videos out there as well that show travel and stuff like that, Lydia's now included. However, they didn't necessarily say how to do it, they just really explained where to go, where you should go and see. And I took a lot of inspiration from videos like that, but there wasn't really much explaining actually how to do it. And I think that's the premise of this. Hopefully it's a slightly easier sense of information in order to explain it. So I will also just mention before, I have traveled to many other places as well, which I'm sure you can go and see on my Instagram, like Australia, Southeast Asia, all of these other places, and I do know quite a bit about traveling through them as well. I have worked as a travel agent in the past, and I will just mention that if, for instance, you like the sound of this video, you like the look of what me and Lydia did before, you can obviously get in touch with me through Instagram, and I would be more than happy to look at planning specific trips for you guys as well, if that's something you were interested in, and then I can plan it exactly down to the nail so you don't have to worry about anything. Everything is sorted, everything is booked, and then you don't have to go around on this video like searching for each place as well. But that's not just for Scotland, it can also be for any of the other places, just so I'd let you know. But anyway, we will move straight on into the itinerary. So first things first. So me and Lydia went for about 4.5, 5 weeks. However, I have cropped it down into like a 4-week plan, basically make it a little bit easier. The reason being is because then you can, say for instance you only had a week to go, you could basically cut and crop it as you wanted to. For example, if you wanted to just go for the North Coast 500, which is roughly around about a week, you could crop it and you could just take my North Coast 500 recommendations and just do that. Even if you just wanted to go to Edinburgh or Glasgow, you could also just cut it and crop it and do it like that. So that's why it's sort of just a 4-week plan in general. I'll talk about it as if it's a 4-week plan. It's really easy to just cut it at, like, say, Inverness and just do that part of it. So that's how it's going to work. Must mention before as well, to do anything of what I'm going to mention, apart from Glasgow and Edinburgh, a car is a must. Unfortunately, Scotland is very sparse and the public transport to a lot of these places is non-existent or not great at all. So a car is a must, but however, there are some tour companies that do operate, like for instance around the Isle of Skye. I did see a lot of like Isle of Skye tour buses as well, so that's something you can also do. The places I'm about to recommend and the pictures you're about to see is not everywhere me and Lydia went, but they are the places that I would very strongly recommend going and seeing, going and doing, but it is not an extensive list and it will not completely fill your time. The reason being is because at the end of the day, if you are going for 3 or 4 weeks, it is completely up to you. There'll be days at which you don't fancy necessarily driving a really long drive or doing a long walk and seeing these places, and it's about being able to shop and change and seeing what you want to do. It's about exploring and tailoring it to however best suits you. Of course, mine and Lydia's trip might work great for some of you guys, but it won't work great for another proportion. So it's about working out what is best for you and where exactly you want to see. So that's why I've only mentioned things that are really good, and I have not mentioned, and I've left some things out as well that you will notice from the video, just because it's not that worth it. I will also mention that food places are not mentioned within my video. As you can tell, they were Lydia's speciality. So if you are interested in where some vegan food places and where to eat, then you want to stay on Lydia's videos and get the recommendations from there, because they are not unfortunately on here. So of course, as I'm sure you saw, we did a lot of camping in our trip as well. That was mainly to keep costs down, and also we didn't mind camping too much. That is also something to consider if you are planning on doing the 4-week trip I'm about to mention. Just make sure that camping is something that's okay with you. And also you need to work out sort of how much you want to wild camp and how much you want to use a campsite, for instance, to those facilities. If you're unsure of what wild camping is, it's basically, in Scotland there is a right to roam law. So what that means is you can basically camp anywhere on public land, not somewhere that is clearly fenced in basically, but you can camp anywhere you like to. However, just make sure that no mess is left, and it's basically a case of making sure that you leave no trace. Of course, with that there are no facilities. Now there are always facilities around in different villages and restaurants and stuff like that that you can use, that me and Lydia found fine. We were usually on a ratio of about 3 to 4 nights wild camping, 1 night in a campsite to use the facilities. But then again, it's all about up to you. Of course, there's some people out there that I'm sure could go 3 weeks just wild camping, completely fine. But I'm sure there are other people out there that couldn't do any wild camping at all. So it's completely up to you. Just make it sort of plan how it is, and you can always find campsites along the way if that's the case. I will be taking it through a map here. Now this here is the route at which we did. This is where we went throughout the whole thing, and this is the route that I'll be taking you guys through as well. It's exactly the same route. However, if we do include all Lydia's excursions, go and get a new phone and to cafes and stuff like that, it would look like this. As you can see, she costs a lot of extra miles on it as well. So I'm sure you'll stick to that route, but that's where I'll be taking it through. So arriving in Edinburgh, I chose Edinburgh as the start destination, mainly due to the fact that the West Coast was deemed prettier than the East, and I can agree with that as well. Not that I saw the complete East Coast, didn't go around Aberdeen way, but I can agree that the West Coast is prettier, so that's why I wanted to do the West Coast afterwards. And Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland, was a lovely place to start. In Edinburgh, my main recommendations would be Dean Village, little village inside of the big city, which was lovely to see. Arthur's Seat, which was the walk, I'm sure you saw, overlooking views over Edinburgh, as well as Fox Falls, which was this sort of rope course over water, which me and Lydia both really enjoyed as well. It's slightly outside of Edinburgh, so it might be something to do on your way in, but no, that was really enjoyable and really recommend that to anyone. Portobello Beach is somewhere that is again slightly outside of Edinburgh, but is worth getting the bus down to. If it's a sunny day, it was a really nice beach. Unfortunately, it wasn't that sunny for us, but no, did both really enjoy it. We, in Edinburgh, as I'm sure you saw, we stayed in student accommodation. Now, the student accommodation was called Destiny Student. Murano is the one we stayed in. I was originally booked into the Shrub Hill one, but they had roadworks going on there. That, however, was about £30 a night, so very cheap, and again, they're private rooms, en suites and everything. So I would highly recommend having a look, just giving Destiny Student, Murano or Shrub Hill accommodation a Google. It will come up, and it's something, yeah, it was really good. So moving on up, there's a short drive to Dundee. Now, we did have other stops that could have been in there as well, such as Falkirk, Stirling, did stop at St Andrews as well. That's all things to stop at. Again, all up to you. We went straight up to Dundee as well, just to see the city, basically. Stay in a Premier Inn, which again was around £30 for the night. Now, moving past Dundee, this is where we started wild camping, because we moved into the Cairngorms National Park. Huge national park in Scotland as well, and this is where there was loads of activities to do. So if you do like adrenaline-based things like me, I would highly recommend going to the Cairngorms and spending a week there, because this was a really great place for it. At the south end of the Cairngorms, we have the Killiecrankie Bungee and Highland Fling. That was where I did my bungee jump, which was there. And also they had a zipline course, they had a sort of big swing. That was really good, really recommend going there. Then slightly up, we went on and we did quad biking around Ardfurky Estate. We've also got the Patak Falls to see as well, which is where we camped on our second night. They were really beautiful. We then also saw further up near Balmoral Castle. That drive to Balmoral Castle is really scenic, really pretty. Even though it is sort of on the east side of the Cairngorms, you do have to do quite a trek over. Driving through the Cairngorms, it's definitely worth seeing the hills and the sights, and in the winter you can also go skiing in the Cairngorms as well, so that's something to look out for. We drove over to Balmoral Castle, didn't go in, it's not too expensive for us, but we did take a hike up to Prince Albert's Cairn, which is that big pyramid. On the drive back and through, you should pass through a town called Tomintoul or something like that. Tomintoul there. And now there is a quarry just outside of Tomintoul, and that was an amazing camping spot. Would highly recommend camping there. Near the top of the Cairngorms, you've got Aviemore, which is sort of the big town within the Cairngorms. Around there, they have loads of activities that you can do, and it's a great place to stay. If camping's not your thing and you want to go to the Cairngorms, Aviemore is the place to go to. We did cycling there around Rothiemurchus, which was really good, and we camped at a place called Loch An Eileen, which was a really scenic loch, which I saw a lot of paddleboarders there as well, and kayakers, and it would be a great place to kayak. It's got a little ruined castle in the middle, so I'd really recommend that. On to Inverness. Now at the top, we did stop just outside of Inverness, whitewater rafting with a company called Ace Adventures. That was down the Findhorn River. I'd recommend that one, as Findhorn River is the only river that is still natural, so meaning it hasn't been tampered with. There's no dams or anything like that, so all of the water flow is natural. I'm sure Lydia will quote on me on this. We both had a really good time on there, so I'd really recommend that. Got to Inverness. We didn't spend too much time in Inverness. We moved on quite quickly through the North Coast 500. We straight away went up and we stayed at Dornoch Beach. In terms of the town Dornoch, it was also equally a lovely place, so I would definitely recommend seeing there as well. Now, skipping all the way up to the top, we have John O'Groats and Duncansby Head. They are the furthest point of mainland UK. Recommend them just for the site and to say you've been there, of course. We never actually made it to Duncansby Head, but that is one of the furthest points, and apparently it is very pretty as well, so I would recommend going out there. We then, if you follow the north around the top a little bit more, you get to a place called Dunnet Bay. Dunnet Bay was really good, and we did some surfing there as well, which we again both really enjoyed. And you would obviously, I understand, I thought the same as well, that the surfing on the north coast of Scotland would be absolutely freezing. Of course there is a wetsuits provided, but it wasn't actually too bad. It was surprisingly, it was cold, but it wasn't, you warmed up quite quickly. I didn't mind it actually. And we actually did stay in Dunnet Bay to camp on the beach. And there was also grass as well over there, so you can also camp up there. Carrying along the north coast, Strathy Point Lighthouse, which is out there. The reason why I recommend that as well is because there were seals that kept popping their heads up and having a look at us, which is really nice to see. So I would definitely recommend that. Varish Castle, slightly on further down. It's sort of the ruins of an old castle, but it's very scenic at the top as well. And then on to Shmoo Caves. We unfortunately arrived too late. However, I would recommend having a look at what time they do their tours through the caves, as you can get a little boat into the cave further and explore it more. We didn't get the chance to do that, so I'm not too sure what's in there, but it did look like it was worth having a look into further. And then after Shmoo Caves, there is an amazing drive down the west coast of Scotland. There are so many viewpoints to stop and look at along the way. It was just stunning, the drive down. Like, there was so many things to see. I think we were really amazed by the whole place as well. So 100% I would, I think out of all of the places that drive down the west coast of Scotland, I think that was one of the most amazing places I went to. So yeah, if I recommend anywhere, it will be there. Moving on, slightly further down as well, we went to Wailing Widow Falls. Now, I think this was my most favourite waterfall, and I think Lydia would also agree, our most favourite waterfall out of the whole trip as well. We had it all to ourselves. It was this huge waterfall. We could swim in it down the bottom as well. It was a little walk to it. The car park's there and you walk upstream, basically. There was a little walk to it, but it was amazing, as I'm sure you can see, and highly recommend. There is also Clashnessie Falls, which is nearby, which we didn't get to, but Clashnessie Falls, I have also heard that that is also very good as well. Now, we did also pop over to Lewis and Harris as we were coming down the north coast. I mean, that I'll leave up to you as well. We obviously had the problem where Lydia lobbed her phone into the sea whilst we were there, so that sort of messed up our plans a little bit. They were very pretty islands as well. However, for the cost and for the amount of driving that we did there, that wasn't something that I would have highly recommended to go to. This is also to cut our plan down to 4 weeks as well, but that's something, if you're tight on time and money, that's something I would probably leave out. That's why. Still coming down the North Coast 500, we've got the Torridon Hills, which is a very scenic place to see. There are also a few walks around there, I'm pretty sure. And then we camped at Applecross Bay, which was, yeah, a lovely place to camp. There was always loads of people camping there as well, and yeah, there's a reason why, so Applecross Bay to camp. On the last day of the North Coast 500, we drove up to the Bilach Naba viewpoint. That was terrible. There was absolutely no view at all. It was completely cloudy. I don't think we even have any pictures from up there because it was just so terrible. Hopefully on a good day it would be. The drive is a little bit treacherous, skinny roads and big steep hills, but unfortunately that's just what you come to expect when you drive around Scotland. So it's just about driving to the road conditions, understanding the passing places if you do drive around, and yeah, not being too scared and not being too stupid with it. That's basically driving in Scotland in a nutshell. The real North Coast 500, it starts and finishes in Inverness. However, we obviously were not doing that. So we jumped over to the Isle of Skye to visit that, which of course, I'm sure, as you all know, is a very beautiful place. We started passing Black Hill Waterfall, amazing waterfall, definitely recommend it. And then to the fairy pools, which was sort of like it was a stream flowing down. It was a series of sort of waterfalls as you went. It was lovely to see. You also have Coral Beach, which again, really nice to go to. And we camped near Dunvegan Castle. So you'll sort of see as the road to drive down to Coral Beach, that's the road that basically you can, there's places where you can park up and you can camp near there with really scenic views, and you can also see Dunvegan Castle. On the next day, I would recommend popping down to the Kerrang Walk. Lydia didn't have a great time as we walked there. To be fair, in miserable weather and wet weather, the walk can be a little bit treacherous as it gets muddy. So if it is really bad weather, I wouldn't recommend it because unfortunately you're not going to see much and it can get quite bad and slippy. However, in good weather it would be amazing, and it still was for us. There was amazing views, and yeah, just have to go and see it. Obviously, there is also the Old Manor Store. Again, another walk up to see some amazing rock features. We actually camped at the top of Old Man Store. That is, again, something that I would recommend, hopefully to see a sunrise. However, if you're not up for wild camping and taking all of the camping gear up there, completely understand. Lydia would vouch for that as well. And then also just to see the capital of Isle of Skye, which is Portree. Okay, so after the Isle of Skye, we worked our way down to Fort William. It was still an incredibly nice drive from the Isle of Skye down to Fort William. We stopped off at Eileen Donnan Castle along the way. That's just out of Isle of Skye. And we also stopped at Loch Cluany. That was really nice to swim in as well. Unfortunately, there was a lot of flies around, but if there wasn't, it was an amazing place to stop and have a swim in Loch Cluany. We also went out to the Glenfinnan Viaduct, which is where part of Harry Potter was filmed, which, even though obviously that it is known for that, looking the other way, it is really scenic as well and really nice to be there, especially at sunset, which is when we went. Fort William is obviously famous for the fact that it sits at the foot of Ben Nevis. That is what we did on the next day, and I would highly recommend climbing Ben Nevis as well. It is not bad. It is not bad in terms of the treacherousness of it, the rocks and everything. There's no scrambling or any of that. However, obviously, it is the tallest mountain in the UK, so there is a lot of walking to do. I think it took me and Lydia about 3 hours to get up with quite a few breaks. Of course, there was many people doing it, but just be prepared for it. A lot of water, a lot of food as you go up, just so you're ready. But the views from the top are, of course, amazing, and you can also say you've climbed to Ben Nevis. After Fort William, we drove down to Oban, where we stopped at the Steel Waterfall, which is just outside of Fort William. That also was an amazing place to go to, would highly recommend. We also camped along the way in Loch Linnhe, next to Loch Linnhe, not in it. We had seals popping up all over the place. The sunset was amazing as well. Would definitely recommend. Obviously, having a look at Oban as well. You can, of course, stay in Oban. There's lots of places to stay in there. It's a lovely little seaside town. Then moving on, we did pop over to the Isle of Mull, got the ferry from Oban. We did drive around the whole island. However, I have slightly changed the plan here. I've cut it down from, we spent 2 nights on the Isle of Mull. I've changed it slightly to 1 night, just because I think all of the places I recommend you can sort of see in a day. Once you arrive on the Isle of Mull, Tobermory is obviously a must for the Ballymorey fans, including myself. You've got East Falls Waterfall as well. Again, another amazing waterfall, definitely recommend. And you've got Calgary Bay Beach, which we spent ages on, and we also did camp there as well. After we arrived back from Isle of Mull, we jumped down to Loch Lomond. About May to September, there is camping management zone, which basically just means that you can't wild camp within Loch Lomond without a permit, basically. So make sure if you are planning on camping in Loch Lomond that you do get a permit. It's really easy to get. Otherwise, I would also recommend just having a look for campsites as well, just because Loch Lomond, it was a little bit difficult to actually find somewhere to camp, especially if you've got a car. So Loch Lomond, I would recommend maybe getting a campsite each day. But the places to go to is hike up Ben Ann, amazing hike with amazing views. Going to Bracklin Falls Bridge, which unfortunately is currently closed, but hopefully it will, I think it's being replaced, so hopefully it'll be open soon. But the falls were very nice as well. Kayaking Loch Lomond is just to be able to see how vast it actually is. It's the largest loch in Scotland, and going and exploring the islands as well once you're there. We kayaked for 4 hours. I'd say about 2 to 4 hours is a good amount of time. And walking up Connick Hill as well, which is on the east side of the loch. Connick Hill was a really nice climb to get really good views. Moving on from Loch Lomond then, we now enter into Glasgow. Glasgow, of course, another major city which is really good for vegan places as well. Highly recommend it. Stopped at the Devil's Pulpit, which is just outside of Loch Lomond on our way down to Glasgow. And I think it was also using the Outlander series as well. In Glasgow, we visited an Acropolis. We also did an escape room as well, which I would definitely recommend, just doing an escape room regardless. Then we also visited Glasgow University, an amazing place to go to, and Kelvin Grove Museum. It was very interesting to see with their wildlife artifacts as well as their art. I would definitely recommend. But like I said, there were so many places we ate in Glasgow, especially for vegan food. You have to go to Lydia's videos if that is something you are interested in. And then lastly, just before heading home, you've got the Isle of Arran as well. Now, I don't think this one's a major on many people's lists. However, it was an amazing place. I really loved it, and it's great for wild camping as well. I would highly recommend it to anyone. We went for 2 nights, which I'd say is a good amount of time to explore the whole island. You can drive around the whole thing in that sort of time. We visited Sannox Bay, and just behind that you've got the Glen Sannox Walk. As you can see, we had absolutely amazing views up there, and definitely recommend even just a short walk up there to see that. And then we had this amazing place to camp, which apparently has been cleared out recently by the council. But yeah, camp by North Sannox Pony Trekking, and they're amazing place to wild camp. On to the next day, walking up the Arran Coastal Path to King's Cave, amazing place to see, and also a really nice walk to do. Then we stopped at Glen Ashdale Falls, again another really nice waterfalls to see and a nice walk there. And also we then stopped at Silver Sands Beach to camp, where there is also a campsite there, but you can also wild camp around there if that's what you prefer. But yeah, stopping there, and then after that we drove back home. So yeah, that's my recommendations of where to go and basically how to do it for weeks. But of course, remember, you can always chop and change and do it as you prefer. Now, as with the itinerary, I will have linked down below, linked to a Word document, which should basically just have the itinerary, which I've just basically read off of the 4-week plan. So it's all there, so don't worry about writing down anything. Also, just below that, I will also have a link to a Word document with just a general packing list of things that I would obviously, if you are planning on going 4 weeks and doing a similar amount of wild camping to what we did, packing list I have there are things that are a must, even things such that you wouldn't really think of, like toilet paper and trowel. Of course, if you need to go for a poo, where are you gonna do it? You gotta dig a hole. So they're things that you don't really think of, but you will need to take with you if you are planning on doing what we did. Lastly, now moving on to costs. 4 weeks-ish, and it is, in terms of how holidays go, Scotland can be an incredibly cheap holiday, especially coming from the UK, where you don't have to worry about flights. But regardless of that, it's still an incredibly cheap holiday for going for a long time. Saying that, it does depend on how you do it. Now, of course, if you want to stay in accommodation every single time and eat out all the time, then of course, costs are gonna rack up. Now, the way in which me and Lydia kept costs down was obviously by camping, which was for free, but also by cooking our own meals and buying a lot of our food from supermarkets and things like that. There are ways in which obviously you keep costs down. So again, it just depends on how you prefer to have your own holidays and what you feel would work best for you. But that's just something to factor in again when I'm about to talk through the costs. Now, these costs are what basically me and Lydia spent over 4 or 5 weeks. Now, I'll be talking about it as like individual costs. So we split everything 50-50. So I'll be talking about basically how much I spent myself. So just bear that in mind, depending on whether you're going by yourself, in a couple, or but with a group. Just think about that basically. Just starting off, of course, link down below as well, there will be a breakdown in an Excel document that I've kept of basically how much our costs, how much we spent on everything, so you can just have a look at that if you want to, but I'll just explain it a little bit more in depth. So all in all, the total cost of the holiday for myself was around £2,300. The major ways in which I broke it down were, of course, you've got all your transport expenses, all your accommodation expenses, all your activity expenses, and your food and drink expenses. Those 4 were the major ones. Now, transport expenses, they were things like depreciation of the car we bought, because obviously we bought it before but are now selling it after, so it's depreciation of those prices. Got the insurance on the car, the tax on the car, you've got of course the fuel that's going to cost to get around, and for us included as well, you've also got the ferry prices. So there's a lot of things to concentrate on there. It cost around £700 in transport costs. Fuel wise, I would say for us to do that whole trip, it probably cost us around £300 to £350 together for fuel. So it obviously depends on the car and everything, but again, that's what you should expect around for your fuel prices. Coming on to accommodation, so we spent 8 nights in total in proper accommodation, and we spent about 6 on campsites, so all of that added up. That cost us around £200 each for all of that accommodation. That being about £30 a night for each of our proper stays. On a campsite, averaged out at around £20 per night for a campsite. Then on to activities. Now our activities, obviously loved to plan a lot, and of course could have planned more, but we did about 7 activities. This includes the escape room, kayaking, quad biking, bungee jumping, all of that sort of stuff. Now for myself, it cost me roughly about £400, all of those activities. Of course, it depends how adrenaline thrilled you are and how much you want to do them. You can obviously save that £400 there if you just fancy on going and seeing the places and things like that. Then on to food and drink. Now this was a big one for both of us, where we started with our original budget, however kept having to add to it, mainly from the food and the drink. Now this was obviously all of our supermarket shops as well as eating out. All in all, we spent around £550 each. That was obviously eating out mainly in the cities. We ate out quite a bit, and also buying those odds pub drinks and whatnot along the way. So obviously that's something that you can cut down insane amounts with if you're happy with just buying food from supermarkets and keeping it cheap. And that's something which I'm sure like in 4 weeks you could cut down to about £200 each. It just depends on what works best for you, and £550 was going out and eating. That was what worked best for us. Now there are obviously little miscellaneous expenses as well that you do have to also account for. So for us, that was things such as like car park prices, which would be in the popular areas, little things as ticket fees to get into places. If you're looking to go to a lot of castles and things like that, there are always ticketing fees with stuff like that. So just little things like that you've also got to take into account. And then of course there are also those little expenses which you do have to make sure you budget for. Hopefully they will never happen, but just things like the car breaking down. So make sure to take out breakdown insurance if it's something you don't already have, or it's likely. With our car, it was unfortunately fairly likely. So always have that spare budget in a sense for little stuff like that. But like I said, if you want to have a complete look at all the breakdown of the costs we spent, then just click that link down below. So that is all. Thank you very much for sitting and watching. Well, if you did, but it was an incredibly boring video, I understand that. I'm literally just sat here explaining to you literally what we did, but hopefully it was of some help in order to get a sense of how to go about planning it and where you can actually go. If it's something that's still a little bit baffling to you, or you just don't have the time to go through this video and actually plan it yourself, of course you can reach out and get in contact with me. I'll be happy to do a lot more specific breakdown and actually properly plan your trip for you. Just send me a message through Instagram. But just remember, of course I've just gone through this like you're planning a 4-week trip, but like I said, you can just chop and change it to as you please. And do remember to have a look for things you actually enjoy as well, and places where you actually want to go to, because of course this is just mine and Lydia's experience of it, and some people may have a completely different one. So even if you just want to go for a week or 3 days or 3 weeks, you can always just cut a few things out and see what's best for you. Remember to, obviously, I'll always say it, the best way to travel is to keep your plan quite open and have that room to move things around and explore more, because you may be going one day and see one place where you really want to camp and it's midday. So what? Stop, camp there, enjoy your time there, and then you can always push things back a day. Don't fill and stay to a regimented task. That's the best way I would always recommend to travel. And yeah, lastly, I would just say that obviously, like I mentioned before, I have been to other places such as like Australia and Southeast Asia. If those countries are things that you might be interested in, and you are interested in seeing more content like this where I just pretty much explain to you where I've been and what I've enjoyed, and it's useful in some way, then let me know if you want to see some of that stuff. I hope it's been okay. I hope it hasn't been too boring. That's all from me, and I hope it gave you a lot of information, and I hope you enjoy Scotland as much as me and Lydia did. Thank you so much. Goodbye.